A first impression of the Garmin Index S2 Smart Scale. Now it came in this box here. It also came with these two instruction manuals. The first one is important safety and product information. The second one is the instruction. Now the instructions in English are here, and you can also probably find them on the internet. Other than that, it also came with 4 AAA batteries. So the 4 AAA batteries are these and these, and then we also had the sticker which was on the scale itself. Now, apart from this, it also came with the scale itself. Now, on the front, what we find is a very big mirror-ish kind of situation, which also means I can show you here everything that I already recorded, and also the recording situation here. This is kind of a bluish tint, so it's not entirely black. It's kind of a bluish tint, as I mentioned. This is just a very big Garmin thing. It wouldn't have needed to be that big. Now I assume that this is kind of the separation for the back and the front of the foot that then allows you, or allows the watch to send the current through your legs, basically. On the rear side, we find that I already attached these additional feet that it came with, and these are for, I think, if you want to stand it on a tapestry, I think that's the right word for it, the thing you just have on the floor, and which is also warm, and it looks like a I'm lost of words. So now in here we find the 4 AAA batteries, but we also find a product number, which I probably won't show here. Then here we have the reset button, which is important because sometimes you need to reset the scale. I did this actually like 5 to 10 times as of yesterday in order to try to set up the scale. Now, you also need to press this button once you want to add an additional network. So you open up the Garmin Index app, not the Garmin Index app, but the Garmin Connect app, in which this appears as a device. So you can first of all connect it via Bluetooth. And then once it is connected via Bluetooth, you then can use the Wi-Fi that your phone uses, and this also then will be used by this. But only if the Wi-Fi actually allows this to send data. Mine doesn't, because it is a furnished apartment. So I would have to add the IP address of this device here, but as of now I couldn't find it. Now I looked up a little bit in the internet whether I could find the IP address of this, and what seems to be the case is that if you download an app called Thing, this was on the Garmin forum which I read, so there seems to be an app which allows you, and you could also possibly see this in your router settings, which you usually can access via the web browser. Then all of these devices with their MAC addresses and also their current IP numbers seem to appear. Now the MAC address, as I understand it, is the thing that is fixed. So each device has a certain MAC address. Your notebook, this device, a smartwatch, has also a MAC address. Whereas the IP address, depending on whether you have a static or dynamic protocol, I think it is called, so you basically can switch between those, and then your router or access point basically alternates the IP addresses or has them statically. Now, the MAC address, on the other hand, would be something you could enter, and that would be stable over time. It's kind of like a product number for things that are basically registered on a network, as I understand it. So now, I tried a couple of things. The first thing I tried is setting it up with my whatever you want to call it, with my accommodation Wi-Fi, which was not really possible. I'm unsure where I left off, so we start again here. We have a second button here, and this second button is for where you can set the kilogram, or you can also set, so it says ST, kilograms, and LB, which stands for pounds, I assume. So now you can switch it to pounds, you can switch it to kilograms, and you can also switch it to ST, which I assume stands for stone. And then what you find here is that it says ST. I don't exactly know which countries use a unit called stone, but first of all, if we turn then the scale on, and in my case it is already set up. Now the setup is something on its own, which I probably will not include in here, but basically you have to connect it via Bluetooth, and then I already mentioned that you need to set it up with Wi-Fi. And now, in terms of the Wi-Fi, as I already mentioned, there is this router here. And so in order to bypass this, I had the following idea. I use a secondary phone. So basically, I set it up and the phone said, okay, this works. And the scale also said, okay, this works. And once I stepped on the scale, the values just didn't appear in Garmin. Now, this is kind of a problem because then you cannot transfer the values. You can only see them on here, which is not ideal. So I read on this forum and then I came up with the following idea. What if I use my secondary phone and I activate the hotspot? Now, I did then set up the hotspot as an additional Wi-Fi point. Now, setting it up as an additional Wi-Fi point with the scale did work up to a certain point. So in the beginning it worked, and then I added the other Wi-Fi. Maybe it was just a setup that required basically the connection to work, but it didn't work. So I reset the scale again and I set it up again, now just with the access point from one of my Android phones. One of my Android phones that is also the camera phone, which now is active 24/7. Within the Android settings, what you can set is the turn off. That is usually at 20 minutes. So after 20 minutes, the hotspot of the Wi-Fi on a phone turns off. Now, if the phone is connected to a Wi-Fi, it shares the Wi-Fi connection, which now means I basically have a secondary Wi-Fi, which I can use for this here. Now, I also set this to never turn off. So the Wi-Fi hotspot on the Android device, on the Samsung device S10 I am using, is then never set off, and then it now is working and these values appear. So now once you step on the scale, you can do this classic scale trick by basically stepping on the scale once, and then it goes on. Now it goes on and on and on. If you now press it, let's just try this again. Also, once the values appear, you can just click through the different values by just pressing it with your foot basically, or stepping onto it slightly. Now it also in the beginning updated, so it showed kind of an update symbol. So now let's turn it on again and let's see if we can kind of simulate a load. Not very much, I think so. Well, now maybe about a little more theory then. Now, why would you get a scale like this? I think the main idea of getting a scale like this is that you then can get body composition data in Garmin, which is not otherwise possible. You cannot input it manually, and you also certainly cannot input it, at least as of my understanding of it, with another app. So I previously already had a body composition scale, which I had since 2019, so now for about 5 years, and this is quite a little bit smaller. Now it also means that it barely fits my feet on, but and the other one is quite a little bit bigger. Now this is made, the old scale was made by company Camptron, which is kind of this scale also sells by other companies. Then it also came with an app. The app was called FeelFit, which allowed me to synchronize the weight to Google Fit as well as Samsung have. Now there is also an app called HealthSync, which allows you to synchronize different fitness platforms such as Google Fit to Samsung. And Samsung and Google also now have Health Connect, or a health platform. There was a rebranding, I think, going on, which is basically a combined platform that would synchronize data between Google Fit and Samsung Health. Now, this scale worked with Samsung Health as well as Google Fit. It also, I think there were a few other options. And this was the app FeelFit. Now, this app FeelFit now in the last months had bugs more and more. And I switched to another company which offers kind of a very similar scale, and so I just tried it, and this company is called Renfo. Now Renfo Health offers still similar scales, and so I was able to just connect the app to the old scale, which would otherwise only connect to the other app, but it didn't seem to matter. Now the big problem I had is I had body composition. So the scale itself, the app shows, the old scale shows you more. So it shows you basically different values, such as your bone mass, such as your visceral fat, even though that might just be a calculation attempt to basically estimate this. Or just an estimate, one could also say, based on basically the body composition measurement that is made by bioimpedance. So basically the idea is that it sends a current through mostly your legs, which is also a big downside of just standing on something like this. There are also scales, which you find in gyms mostly, I think, that have handles. In my gym, actually, I find one of these. And so the handles actually also send a current then through your upper body. So it basically takes the shortest route, or the route with the least resistance, and then it goes through. Now, based on, I assume, how long it takes, and so on and so forth, and how much current on the other side then appears, and similarly with your 2 feet, it is estimated, the body composition of your body is estimated. So now, the old scale, I got body fat as well as the weight itself into Samsung Health as well as Google Fit, as well as a couple of other apps that actually synchronize with these apps. So MyFitnessPal, for example, also got synchronized because MyFitnessPal I could connect to Samsung Health. So once you have the weight in Samsung Health or Google Fit, you can connect it to everything else that they connect to. But with Garmin it's different, because Garmin also in this app called HealthSync, which is I think the main app, at least on Android, to synchronize data between fitness platforms. It's a third-party app. It's not made by Samsung or Google Fit. Now, in HealthSync, you can only import certain data to Garmin, but other data not. And mostly Garmin acts as source only. This means you can record data in Garmin, so you can record activities on a Garmin watch, but then you can synchronize them also to Samsung Health, which I am currently doing, which is a nice workaround. But you couldn't record activities on a Samsung watch, for example, and then import them to Garmin. This doesn't work, unfortunately. So the same is true with the scale. Now there's also an argument to be made, maybe as if you are Garmin, you want to kind of control what devices allow you to write body fat data and also muscle mass into the app itself, into Garmin or into the service itself, and therefore you kind of control the accuracy of these devices. So it might be the case that a scale like this might have an accuracy that is a little bit off. So actually weighing myself on this and on the Garmin scale seems to show me about 1% higher in body fat on basically the same date, same timestamp at least. Of course I took maybe 1 or 2 minutes to stand in between, to stand on both scales. But I didn't drink anything in between, so basically there was a difference in about 1 or 1.2% in terms of body fat. And in terms of weight, there was also a 2.4 kilogram difference, which is about 400 grams or 500 grams. Now, I looked a little bit, and at least Microsoft Copilot cited an article where the Garmin Index, or the S2 in this case, so there already was a precursor to this, or another version of this, which looked a little bit different, and which seems to also have been not that connective in terms of Wi-Fi. So there is, I think, a new sensor in this. I don't exactly know. By the way, this is what it looks like when it tries to connect to a phone, which it seems that it currently is trying to do. Now, this is also the symbol that it synchronizes, and this is the symbol. This is also the thing that is appearing. So I might actually accidentally have pressed the reset button, maybe just for the purpose of showing it on video, which is not exactly ideal, because this means I now have to set it up again. Once you step then on the scale, or maybe just to finish off the synchronization thing, I know what I can do. And this has been quite a surprise actually. So previously I had body composition data in Samsung Health, and I had with the weight from the scale automatically imported in Samsung Health. This then also the same, so once I stepped on the scale, the weight appeared in Samsung Health, it appeared in Google Fit, and it also appeared in MyFitnessPal. And MyFitnessPal is actually the weight database I have the longest history in, because I also just input the weight that I had on non-smart scales before, beginning in 2016 already, so 3 years before I got this smart scale. Now, here is the big surprise. If you synchronize weight and weight data in between fitness platforms, also with HealthSync in the past, you could only synchronize mostly the weight itself, but not the body composition. Now, what seems to work with the Garmin Index S2 is the following. I step on the scale, it appears in Garmin Connect. Then HealthSync takes this data point and synchronizes not only the weight, but also the body composition, so the percent, in my case 18% at this point in time. And then what we also have is the muscle mass. So it also measures not only muscle mass and body fat, but it also measures your body water and also your bone mass. And these values then appear on this scale. So now kind of a walkthrough. Now you step on the scale, then it takes a little bit of time, and once it shows the screen icon, then it means that it has locked in the weight. It then shows you the name. So if you have seen an ad of this scale, for example, or you looked it up already, this is where Alex would appear. So that's basically the custom name you can set for your user profile. It also has the ability to store up to, not to store, but to connect to up to 15 users, which means if you have a family of 14, then you could use the scale and set up Garmin profiles for all of those. Then what appears is this here, which is called the weight trend. Now the weight trend hand has the benefit that you can see kind of a trend and not just rely alone on, okay, I weighed as much, but I also drank 2 liters of water, so maybe that's just something that is now, but it's not for the whole week. Now, it also shows you your BMI. In my case, it might be a little bit high, but also the more muscle mass you have, the higher your BMI, obviously, because BMI does not take into account body composition, but mostly it is just a height to weight ratio or weight to height. Actually, I don't know as of now. Now, the next thing it shows you is the body composition. In my case, it's as of yesterday, 18.3%. That's not the body composition, that's just the percentage of your body which is fat. So we assume I weigh 100 kilograms and I have 10% fat, it would be 10 kilograms, so it would be 10%. Now, the next thing it shows you is your muscle mass, and this is also something that is quite nice. And what you also are seeing, it almost looks ridiculous. It's like Garmin, Garmin, Garmin shouting in your face. Now, the next thing it shows you is your bone mass. Now, the bone mass is quite a little bit different compared to the scale I had before. On this scale, at least on the app, and also on the other app, it showed me a bone mass of, I think, 3.5 kilograms, which was average, but also kind of on the lower end. Here, it is a difference of almost 2 kilograms, which is, I don't know what it is. Maybe this is more accurate, maybe the other one is more accurate. There would be many things that I could say right now. That it makes sense to have multiple devices, that it might make sense to, in terms of simplicity, only rely on one device and see the changes over time. I don't exactly know what would be the right conclusion to draw. Now, the next thing it shows you is the body water, which is, I don't know exactly how useful for what specific scenario. Then it also shows you the weather, not the weather. and then it shows you the kilograms again. So that's what is happening once you step on the scale. And it also then might synchronize, and also now it updates. So because I set it there, now it is gone again. Because I pressed probably accidentally the reset button, you also now see what it looks like once it connects or tries to connect to your phone. And then there's also this just settings icon that is appearing once it does something with settings, and also the scale does update. So I updated twice or 3 times already, because once I reset, it sometimes did not take, it sometimes had the update stored and sometimes it did not. I'm not exactly sure. So with the current setup I have now and the hotspot set up, it seems to appear that if I press basically the actualization, or not the actualization, once I basically update the app Garmin Connect, then the weight appears after I have stepped on it. Before the hotspot turned on and off, so it was not exactly as I would have liked it. Now, this is in Garmin Connect, but it takes a little bit longer for the weight to appear, and also the body composition, so not body composition, but body fat percentage, and also the skeletal muscle mass, because this other thing actually showed me the total muscle mass, which in my case is, I think, 66 kilograms. But this also includes organ tissue, which is also muscle, but not skeletal muscle, but much more a different kind of muscle, which I don't know the proper name right now for. I think it's called smooth muscle, actually. So the heart, for example, I think would be a smooth muscle, but not exactly sure about this. Now, you could also ask the question, does it synchronize to your watch? Because VO2 max, for example, is basically proportional to, not proportional, but VO2 max is standardized. I don't know exactly the word for it, but in the VO2 max is milliliters multiplied by, it's milliliters divided by kilogram multiplied by minute. So kilogram as well as minute are in the denominator, and in the other thing, which I don't know the name of, you have the milliliters. So the kilograms and the minutes, denominator, and the other thing in the upper thing of the ratio. So the thread I was coming from is that in terms of VO2 max calculation, it makes a difference how much you weigh. So basically you have your power, or whatever your performance is, and then it sets it in ratio, in relation to your weight. So as you go up or down in weight, your VO2 max might change. So it would be important that also on your watch, so the watch basically does not have internet. So it nonetheless gives you your VO2 max estimate once you take a run that qualifies basically for a VO2 max estimate, which I think it's 20 minutes, and on a flat surface, probably somewhat flat, because a little bit of elevation outside you might have. So now, it actually updates this weight, and this is then what it looks like on the watch itself. You go into the settings and your user profile, and then it updates the weight, but only for full numbers. So if you have 80.5, I think it then takes the 81, it rounds up to the 81 kilograms as in my case. In terms of price, the old scale I bought in 2019 cost me 30 euros, including the app, which I never had to pay for. Now, I also don't have to pay for Garmin Connect because of the pricing model Garmin uses, where you buy the devices and then the app or service is for free, at least as of now. But if we then have the scale, then, not if we then have the scale, this scale costs new 150 euros in my country, and I got it refurbished for 125 euros. Now, this is quite a little bit more compared to the other scale, just for the I probably have I probably have a scale that is now bigger, which means if I ever move again, then I have more stuff, because I now also have two scales. So I probably will keep the other scale for quite some time, maybe to compare, and also maybe if the other scale, if the S2 scale might have an issue, for example, I still then have the other. So I don't know if I sell the other one. I also don't know if it still makes sense, because the app does sometimes not work. Of course, I wouldn't sell the app and the other person would download. Maybe it's something specific to my Galaxy S10, which I still have, even though it's from 2019, and maybe it would work. The app would work with a newer model better. I don't know exactly. So I already have now a place for this in my bathroom, and I already also did something else with the scale, because previously, this is also something I have to mention maybe, which was somewhat of a selling point for the new scale, for the Garmin S2. The old scale had a Bluetooth connection. Now, I think there is a somewhat suboptimal incentive structure that results out of me having my phone on during the day, which is that on my phone there are multiple things that basically compete for my attention. Now, if I in the morning already, once I stand up, and for this reason specifically, I actually for months and for years recorded evening weight only, because I wanted to avoid having my phone open already when I would get out of bed, basically. But because this scale only had Bluetooth, I needed my phone to transfer the weight with Bluetooth, and I also needed to be in reach with this, and I also needed to have it open up. Now, with Bixby routines, what you can do, and this is now on a Samsung device, with Bixby routines you can tell the phone to open the app up on a certain part of the day, so at a certain time of the day, which I did usually in the evening. So I weighed myself in the evening also to create basically a bigger incentive to eat less volume. So the incentive structure is not exactly clear, because the vector, the resulting incentive vector, is not exactly optimizing towards long-term performance or long-term performance to weight ratio maybe also, which would maybe be a more useful metric compared to just weight, to just body fat, to just muscle mass, and so on and so forth. There is also the bigger question, I think, with having devices like this. What do you want to aim for? Now, in terms of now system architecture, in terms of fitness system architecture, I have been kind of making a bet that Garmin, or at least I just have chosen Garmin to be my main fitness platform. And this has, I think, multiple reasons. Now, first of all, I did start my journey with a Galaxy Fit, then I switched to an Active 2, also Galaxy, then I switched to a Galaxy Watch 4. Then I wanted also to include HRV, to also include maybe respiratory rate in the data, which I would collect. So I got an old, refurbished also, 6S Pro, Phoenix 6S Pro from Garmin last year. I decided to upgrade to the Phoenix 7S Pro because it also had a couple of other things, and I also had mostly sleep tracking issues with the old watch. Now, I also can track my sunlight exposure to a certain extent, or at least approximate my sunlight exposure, because this has a ring on here. Now, the idea is that I basically kind of am betting on Garmin more and more, where previously I actually used Samsung Health for most of my fitness tracking. But Garmin seems to be more targeted towards what I actually want, which is to kind of treat myself sounds ridiculous, to kind of see myself, or to, at least for some portion of time, I try to kind of be an athlete that strives towards basically trying to do everything in order to live as long as possible. That's kind of my main goal. And of course there would be other goals, such as run as fast as possible, but then run as fast as possible might not be a good incentive vector, or a good long-term optimization vector, or a long-term optimization method vector that one could use. So I bet more and more on Garmin, but I didn't have weight data in Garmin. What I previously used was that I would step on this scale every day, but I once a week would update the weight manually within my Fitness Pal. So my Fitness Pal is connected, in my case, to Garmin. Now, Garmin Connect synchronizes the activity data, which then updates basically the calories, the expended calories for a given day. So I use basically Garmin as my activity tracker and also for the activity for basically importing the then resulting calories into my Fitness Pal, for example. But my Fitness Pal, even though it got the weight previously from Samsung Health, because it's synchronized, so the app, the scale synchronized to the app synchronized to Samsung Health, and Samsung Health synchronized to my Fitness Pal. But this didn't synchronize to Garmin Connect. So only if I manually entered the weight in my Fitness Pal, it would update to Samsung, not to Samsung, but to Garmin in this case, which also means my VO2 max estimate, for example, was based on basically a once a week measurement of my weight. Now, of course, you could say that's accurate enough and so on and so forth. But yeah, well, there were also a couple of other issues, such as the phone thing. And now with the Wi-Fi, the idea at least is if this turns out to be something that works over time, then I can just step on the scale and then use basically the Wi-Fi to not have my phone open in the morning. So I currently stand up at 6, then I have about half an hour in which I also step on the scale, and then I leave for working out usually. Now, if I, during this time, already have my phone open, then this is kind of a risk. This is actually not a very small risk in my eyes. And even though many people might say, okay, this is not that big of a deal, it's just your phone and so on and so forth, I know that for myself, if the phone is open during these 30 minutes, that this is a negative impact on how the day will probably turn out. So I try to reduce this. And I also tried previous methods of basically blocking certain parts of the phone, turning on and off the Wi-Fi automatically with Bixby routines, but not having it open now is possible, I think, with this scale here. Now, I also left this on in order to have, so I left these feet on in order to be able to slide it out under the bathroom cabinet I have, and then I can store it again in there. I kind of found now a place already. Now, there is also something else I wanted to mention, which is the result of this surprise. So first of all, I now have an always up-to-date, of course it takes a little bit of time. It doesn't not synchronize automatically, because even though this here sends via Wi-Fi into Garmin Connect, then you open up the Garmin Connect app on your phone and the weight already might be synchronized. But the watch might have Wi-Fi, so it might also synchronize the weight with Wi-Fi, or also once it connects with your phone, I don't know exactly if it also gets the weight via Wi-Fi. So my weight is updated on this watch kind of automatically. I don't assume it's instantaneously. I also looked it up and it was not instantaneously. Now, the next thing is that I am still to some extent using Samsung Health. On Garmin, for example, you do not have the option to input blood glucose data, but once a week in a weekly measurement circle, you could say, it takes, I don't know, 30 to 40 minutes to get all these measurements done. But what I am... This might be also something. It took quite a few minutes often to just weigh myself, because I opened up the old app and then I also didn't really know whether the old app or the new app, the Renfrew app, and then I had to open it up and maybe my phone had no battery, so I would have to start the phone just to step on the scale. Now I can step on the scale and it doesn't matter. And also I can exchange the batteries on here and it just basically would update automatically. Now, what it also updates automatically is my weight now in Samsung. And in Samsung now, I do not only have... So, this is now another side tangent. Now, it might be the case that you would not be interested in this. Nonetheless, I will include it in this video. And the side tangent is about Samsung Health. In Samsung Health, you have the option to only... So, previously, I used this scale here. This scale measured lots of things, but it only... the integration with Samsung Health only got the weight across as well as the body composition across. Now, newer Samsung watches also have something additional. And this something additional is that you can measure body composition by doing a body composition measurement, which looks like this. So you have this widget on here, and then you can click on measure. Now, if you click on measure, this is obviously not a scale. It just is able to measure your body composition, but it also then measures your absolute fat mass as well as your body fat percentage and so on. So if you do this, you need a weight. Now, it already has the weight that would be the last weight that is stored in Samsung Health. In my case, it would now automatically update this weight. But, so, what I try to do is find, first of all, a metric that would allow me to, again, get basically below to go somewhere else, which is not the current absolute body fat level or the current body fat percentage, which is too high in my eyes because I already was sub 10% and I felt a lot better on this. My runs were faster and so on and so forth. So also now there is something, so there are a couple of extra points. First of all, I am still using Samsung Health at least to a certain extent because I also thought about maybe using Samsung Health just for weight and then Garmin for activities. But I ideally would have one app that would be on my phone, that also would be on my notebook because I don't want to use my phone that much. And so, or I try to avoid using my phone because there are things that in terms of incentive structure are not very optimal and designed to basically make me spend more time on my phone. So basically also I try to get rid of things like these that would be on my phone. But in terms of now, the body composition data in Samsung Health. Previously, I only would have the weight as well as the body composition unless I stepped on a scale and then measured afterwards the body composition additionally on my watch. Now, if you only have 30 minutes, and this might be very similar for other people as well, if you measure yourself in the morning or you measure your weight in the morning, then it should be ideally quick because often you have a lot of things to do, especially in the morning. Especially if in the morning, if your brain power is still a little bit higher compared to the rest of the day, maybe. So also measuring body composition, and then there's also something else, and this might be not that accurate. So the body composition, the body fat percentage actually was quite a little bit up and down and so on and so forth. There also was this other problem, which was that sometimes the body fat percentage was from here, and sometimes if I then additionally measured, it would have the weight on here, so it would be an additional weight timestamp, or data entry point, but it would only then be, it would then be simultaneously to the other one. So it could be that on a certain day, so basically I step on a scale in the morning, it says it's 17%, and then this watch says, okay, it's 17.5%, or it's 18%, or it's 15%. So I would have two simultaneous values, and this would pollute my data set. So if then over time I took a look at this, I was like, okay, does this say anything at all? Is this just, is this from this or from this? So why would I then use this at all, this additional feature on the Galaxy Watch? Because it then gave me additional metrics, such as the overall skeletal muscle mass. It also would give me fat mass. So my absolute fat mass, it would calculate me. And it would also give me body water, in this case 48.9 kilograms. And it would also give me a body fat analysis, so in this case 19.1%. Now, how it looks like in terms of Samsung Health, it looks like this. So you have these different entries, and then it shows you first of all the weight, then it shows you the total muscle mass, which is also synchronized with this app called HealthSync, and and it also shows you the body fat percentage. Now these are all measurements I took as of today or of yesterday. These are actually all of today. So what I also try to do, and this is now something that is also kind of possible because it doesn't take that long to step on a scale, is to take my weight at multiple times at multiple times of the day, or multiple times in the day, or during the day. I don't know what is exactly grammatically right. Why would this make sense? Because if I measure myself after I had dinner, after I basically went on the toilet in the morning, of course my weight fluctuates. And the idea is that if I do this for a couple of days, then I have kind of a range and I can kind of see, okay, if I eat a little bit, then it's probably my weight goes up a kilogram, which also might impact my running, for example. If I eat a lot before running, then my performance per weight ratio actually goes, in this case, down. So much about this year. Now, the big surprise is now that I don't have to measure body composition additionally just to have this value, or the kilograms, the skeletal muscle mass, for example, in Samsung Health, because it now gets it from Garmin via HealthSync. So basically this issue of additionally measuring this, and of course this also would make sense if, for example, I'm traveling, then I could step on any scale and measure my body composition nonetheless. But the question then is the scale is the scale basically, is the scale accurate? That's what I'm trying to say. So it would make more sense to step on the same scale, because then you would have the same accuracy error, but it would be the same because it's the same device. Whereas if you switch devices in between, then you might have different different things that are going on there, because it's different devices, and so they might have different accuracy ranges and so on and so forth. So now I have all this data I just showed you. It seems to also calculate this based on the muscle mass. So it seems to just need the body fat percentage, the skeletal muscle mass, as well as the kilograms, and then it calculates all of the rest. And this is now Samsung Health. Now I could actually show you what it looks like in Garmin if it already is a Garmin scale. So first of all, the weight widget, this is the weight widget as it looks like in the new Garmin Connect beta. And I maybe should cover my face, otherwise it doesn't show you. So if you then click on this, and this, by the way, also doesn't show a body fat percentage, which would be nice, or it would be nice if it, instead of BMI, showed your body fat percentage. I don't know exactly. So this is now what it looks like, the weight itself. So this is as of today. As of today, it doesn't show a graph, it just shows you all the different weigh-ins. It shows you the weight, the change, the BMI, the body fat, the skeletal muscle mass, the bone mass, and the body water. Now, and it also shows you a trend as indicated by these arrows. Now, if you go to the last 7 days, then it indicates that there is a certain range by having these arrows up and down. And then it also has this blue line, which is kind of the trend line. So it also shows you, as you can see down here, or on the other side rather, I just mixed up the sides. It also shows you an average weight. It also shows you your BMI. It also shows you, if you then go onto the larger time scale, so for example for the last year, it then calculates your average. In this case, 76.8 kilograms. And the body fat is also then calculated, I think, as an average, which, if you then use these values, for example, to input it into a calculator, I think is a very reasonable thing to use, instead of, okay, I weighed this much today. If you, instead of thinking of your weight as of the weight you had today or yesterday, and then you ate something that had 1 liter of water in it, as the average of a given year, for example, also the VO2 max average of a given year, then you would see the trends maybe on a bigger time scale, which would maybe, so the resulting incentives out of this might be a little bit more optimized towards long-term, or towards long-termism, one could also say, because that's seemingly also a word now. It also shows you bone mass as well as body water, and that's basically it. These are all the averages, and then you can click on the individual things such as BMI, it looks like this, body fat looks like this, and then you also have skeletal muscle mass, and I only have this 1 or 2 entries because previously there was this data not in Garmin Connect. So I previously already mentioned that I now kind of bet on the Trinity. Not on the Trinity, this is something I didn't mention. So there are a couple of apps that I think work together quite nicely. The first is now Garmin, which is my activity tracker or fitness tracker. I then am using still a little bit Samsung Health, but what I would like to see ideally is that Garmin becomes better than Samsung Health, or it doesn't have to become better. It doesn't have to be one or the other, but since I'm now already using Garmin, it would be nice if it also had these functions that Samsung Health still has that aren't in Garmin, such as getting my blood pressure, for example, automatically. Now, to get your blood pressure automatically, so you can now in Garmin also import blood pressure data. I don't know if this is specific to this beta I am enrolled in, but you then have blood pressure, and this is also a tile here or a glance in here, and then you can have it like this. So this is my blood pressure data since I began recording it. This is all the blood pressure data actually I have. I also can go to, no, this is just the maximum range, I think. Now this is from Omron Connect. So I have a blood pressure monitor, which does not synchronize with Garmin. So I did spend basically a couple of hours getting this data manually into Garmin because there was no other way. I also tried via the web feature where you can upload activity, but this is not activity data, so it didn't work. So now I updated my scale to be a Garmin scale just to have the weight and the body composition in Garmin. I also am thinking about getting the blood pressure monitor, because then I would also have the blood pressure in Garmin. And just an example of why this might be useful, for example. Fitness age. So the concept of biological age, and now fitness age would be a subcategory of biological age in this case. Garmin has a fitness age. So it's basically the idea that if an 80-year-old would have a body of a 20-year-old, for example, So basically he would be able to run faster, he would be able to bench press more, and he would have a higher VO2 max. And he would also look like a 20-year-old. Then there seems to be a difference in the chronological age and the body he has, kind of. So the idea is that if you fulfill, that's not the idea, that's just the way to measure it. But the idea is that your body could be younger than you actually are. So this is always compared to the averages. So if I, for example, would have the body of an 18-year-old, and 18-year-old seems to be kind of the peak of a few metrics, there seem to be a few metrics that peak at other ages. So if I would be 80 and I would still be functioning, as similar to the average 18 or 20-year-old, then this probably means I'm better off compared to the other 80-year-olds. That's the kind of idea. So Garmin has now somewhat implemented this with fitness age. So the fitness age is something that shows you how old your fitness age, or how old you are based on your fitness data, basically. And not based on any fitness data, but based on the data that Garmin records. So this could be your maximum heart rate. This could be your body composition. I actually don't know exactly what is all included in this fitness age, but it takes into account activity intensity, resting heart rate, and body fat percentage, or BMI. So this is all it seems to take into account as of now. And that's a fitness age in Garmin. And then it gives you a recommendation. So in my case, for example, I seem to have enough vigorous days. I also seem to have enough vigorous minutes, and the resting heart rate of 50 or 53 seems to also be somewhat optimal already, or optimized already. And then I could reduce my body fat as of the average body fat of 19 to 40.4, and then I would be 18 again. Now, this is the Garmin fitness age. Now, this in the future might look a little bit different as more data comes kind of online, and as more studies are done on this, or as research is developing, this might become more or less of a thing. I don't know exactly what it will become, but it seems to be a very relatable metric. Okay, I can perform as well as an 18-year-old, at least in terms of my physical ability. Now there is Garmin, which is then my activity tracker, which also gives me a fitness age. Now there is also Insight Tracker, which is another service, and that works together with Garmin. So in Insight Tracker, what I can do is I can basically upload, or also with the company, I could, in theory, if I lived in the US, but I don't, also take blood tests with the company. But in my case, I just took them independently and then just uploaded the results. Now, Insight Tracker costs something, but of course the scale also costs something, and therefore I'm paying for Garmin Connect also in a certain way. Now, the Trinity I mentioned is basically MyFitnessPal for the diet, then Garmin for fitness tracking, also for sleep tracking, and so on and so forth. So often it is mentioned that sleep, exercise, as well as the diet seem to be the most important factors when it comes to health. And so in Insight Tracker now, what I have is the Garmin sleep data, for example, and this is then also recorded in Insight Tracker, and I assume, at least to a certain extent, that the recommendations are based upon this. For example, I am still getting an ashwagandha recommendation that I should start taking ashwagandha as a supplement. Why? It also previously mentioned that it would increase my VO2 max. So it imports my VO2 max from Garmin in this case, and then it basically shows me whether this is an optimized range, which is also something that is not available in Garmin. Because Garmin just says, okay, this is superior, this is like this, but it doesn't give me an optimized range like this, also for resting heart rate. So if I record my blood pressure also in Garmin, and if I also have my body composition data in Garmin, something like Insight Tracker maybe could also base the nutritional recommendations then on this. Now I also am running kind of an experiment with making a shake that is consisting out of the different food recommendations it gives, Insight Tracker gives me, and I mentioned this in a couple of other videos probably already. And so I have MyFitnessPal to kind of track my diet and to keep track of my diet. Then I have Garmin to record my fitness data. I'm still synchronizing all of the fitness data to Samsung Health, but I'm not using Samsung Health actively. Also, Samsung Health does not have a web platform, which is also one of the main points why not one of the main points, but was also a decision variable why I switched to Garmin, and now also bought a Garmin S2.